Booyah.
Please don't ever say that to me again.
Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, back for another edition of our Release the Snyder Cut videos here on CinemaBlend, joined as always by the wonderful Hannah Saulic. Hi Hannah, how are you doing?
I'm great, because we're talking about Cyborg.
Well, yeah, we've been doing these character breakdowns and talking about how different each of the Justice League members are going to be from the theatrical cut that we saw to the Justice League that's coming to HBO Max, directed by Zack Snyder, and we are up to Ray Fisher's half-man, half-machine character, Cyborg. And so we're not going to touch on any of the ongoing investigation that Ray is going through with Joss and Jeff Johns and John Berg and Warner Brothers Pictures. We did do a video based on those accusations, and it's one of those stories that's changing by the day and week.
And it's its own video. We can't even get into that in the time that we have.
For sure. But that's going to be linked in the description down below. So if you want to go watch that, definitely check out that video. And also pay attention to CinemaBlend too, because we're covering it on the daily. But what are we doing today?
Well, so we always start these off by talking about just what was wrong with each member of the Justice League in Josstice League. And we can't obviously do that with Cyborg / Victor Stone without first mentioning Ray Fisher's most recent update, which was that almost all of his scenes...
Except for one scene. He singled out one scene in particular on the Gotham rooftop where they meet Commissioner Gordon.
But everything else was a reshoot, which is huge news.
It is, and if you go back and watch the theatrical cut, and I know that people don't want to do that, and I don't blame you. You could tell so much of his scenes were reshot. They have that sort of bad lighting, glossy sheen that's evident in almost anything that Joss shot. And so I actually, in preparation for this video, went back through to pull out all of the Cyborg scenes to get a sense of how it might change. We've said this in the other videos. I think a lot of the character beats and story points are still essentially going to be in place, but they're just going to be developed so much more. Cyborg is one of those characters that's truly suffered the most from going from a 4-hour cut to a 2-hour cut. And when going over the theatrical cut again, I was kind of reminded by the fact that everybody in the league kind of got one quick scene to sort of introduce who they are and what their backstory is, and then they were quickly shoehorned into the team. And with Victor, it ties heavily into his relationship with both Silas, his mother, who we don't get to meet in the theatrical cut, and who is expected to be a significant part of the longer versions coming to HBO Max, and everything that comes with his accident. And so that's where I think most of the changes are going to come.
I just want to back up to something that you just said, which was that all of the character beats we think for the main Justice League members are going to be more or less the same. But do you still think that for Cyborg in particular, just because so much of his stuff was cut?
Yeah, well, so much was cut, but I think most of the things that were cut were his backstory, which is going to make him more of a fleshed out character than what we see in theatrical cut. And what I mean by story beats, I still think he's going to get recruited into the league by Diana. And we do see some of the way that they connect with each other, and Diana is the one who sort of sets up the fact that, hey, there's a big threat coming and we need to get together as part of a team, and he sort of directs them in a way to go. Because, and I'll go back to the one scene that he says was a holdover from Zack's time on the film, which was the Gotham rooftop confrontation with all the characters. And that's what we got to watch Zack shoot when we were on his set in 2016. And the thing that's significantly different from the way that it plays out in theatrical is that when Cyborg showed up on the rooftop, when we were watching them film, he says to the members of the league, hey, there was an attack at Star Labs, so I know that they're coming after this mother box, and this is why it's significant of what they're doing here. That gets removed from theatrical cut. We never see the attack on Star Labs. We never see that battle. And Cyborg is definitely mentioning it when he meets up with the League before they head off to the Gotham Harbor fight. So much of that is going to be filled in before we get to that rooftop scene, which I think is going to be really significant to paying off who Victor is. But a lot of it is going to have to be almost flashback, and I'm really curious to see how Zack handles that, because in BVS we do see the transformation of the badly damaged Victor Stone turning into Cyborg, with Silas using the mother box to convert him into Cyborg. So anything that we see with him as the football player, anything we see with him as a son with his mother, those are all going to have to be flashback scenes that I think are going to build into the amount of struggle that Victor Stone is going through, and it's going to give Ray Fisher a chance to actually do some acting.
That's what I was going to say. So we'll get into more of like his actual backstory and all of that stuff in a little bit, but just going back to just straight up what was wrong with Cyborg and Victor Stone in Justice League is he's not acting. He gets like these one-liners where it's just like he's very monotone. He can't really interact in like an emotional way, and it's just, I'm like, I feel like he's better than what we got to see.
It's not only that too, there are multiple scenes that I can point to that are going to be in Zack's version, because he's referenced them on Vero and other places, where you're going to see Victor figuring out the full extent of what Cyborg can do, his powers, right? There's going to be a scene where he gets a flight, a first flight scene that's very similar to Henry doing it in Man of Steel when he's first figuring out his powers. And people point to that scene in Man of Steel as one of the most beautiful interpretations of Superman, because he's clumsy, he's awkward at first, you know, he crashes into a mountain, and when he finally gets it and he's able to soar, it's truly uplifting. You're seeing that character, you know, grow into what he's able to be. You're going to get that in Cyborg. There is a shot in the fandom trailer which shows very briefly Ray controlling all of these missiles, and I know that that's something that Zack has talked about, where Cyborg is able to basically, I think, infiltrate all of the country's defense systems, or maybe even the planet's defense systems, and manipulate their weaponry to show just how sophisticated he is. Whereas in theatrical cut, because all of that just gets decimated, you get that really bad moment at the Monument Park fight.
You have nothing for Cyborg to do. There's nothing for him to do.
And in fact, like, there's a moment where his AI is like rebelling against him, and it's gonna shoot at Superman instead. And Ray has to play this bit where he's just like,
"Shit! What are you doing,
Victor?
It's my armor's defense system.
No.
It's stronger since the interface. I can't control it.
Victor, no!
Victor!
Control
Shut him off!
Victor. So we're happier place. It's awkward. It's really painful. And I think instead, Zack is going to take the time to really develop how Cyborg is connecting to his powers. He has a moment when he's talking to Silas Stone in the apartment. It's the only scene that Joss gives to Victor Stone to develop the push and pull of I'm this monster. And he has this conversation with the dad. Like,
you can have a life. You can have more than... If you stay up here brooding...
I'm processing. Does anybody know I'm alive?
I didn't think you were ready for them to...
For what? For them to see the monster.
You are not a monster.
It's weird that you thought I meant me.
I think you're going to get so much more of that in Zack's version, and he'll just develop the push and pull that Victor feels between, am I obligated to be a hero? What have I become? This wasn't even my decision. My father made it for me. Like, there's a lot of things to play around with there dramatically.
Yeah, and I think just the last point that I want to bring up is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Justice League sort of supposed to set up Cyborg/Victor Stone as somebody that you would want to see in his own solo film or continue off on his own adventure in some way? Like, it was supposed to give the audience that emotional connection to that character, right?
100%. I mean, there was a Cyborg movie on the slate, and I know that it's one that they wanted to get to. I actually think if everything kept on the schedule from the 2017 release of Justice League, the Cyborg movie would have arrived this year. It was down for 2020. Now, there were so many other movies that were supposed to come. There was supposed to be a Flash movie, Ben Affleck's solo Batman movie, a Green Lantern Corps film, and none of those things got developed. But yes, in much the same way that James Wan took the Aquaman baton and ran with it, we were supposed to get a Cyborg film and explore more of what he's going to do. Now, Cyborg, while he's really interesting, he does do a lot of solo stuff in the DC Comics. He's more often part of the Teen Titans, and paired up with a lot of those characters. There are moments where he and Flash do a lot of team-up combination stuff, and I do know that the chemistry between Ezra Miller as the Flash and Ray Fisher as Cyborg was going to be leaned onto in Warner Brothers.
I love them together.
They're really, they can be a lot of fun, and I know they're sort of like the young, scrappy versions of the team, and going back to theatrical, I was reminded about the fact that they had to dig up Superman's corpse in that painfully awkward scene. I still think that that's going to happen. That's another one of those narrative beats that I think is going to happen because we do see that
executed differently.
100%. Yes, it'll be not so ham-fisted and them making jokes about, digging up corpses.
Oh, good old Justice League.
Well, we gotta stop him.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
So one thing that Zack Snyder has said repeatedly that everybody's kind of clinging on to is the fact that Victor Stone is going to be the heart of the story. We've heard that a million times, and if you follow Zack Snyder's Justice League news, you've heard that a million times. So Sean, what does that actually mean?
That's a great question, and it's truthfully one of the things that I don't know and am excited to learn, because I have heard it a number of different times as well too, and I think that Zack has a real connection to the Victor Stone character. But if you just talk about the different ways that we're going to see more of the character, he has the most tragic of backstories. Oh God, that's even hard to say too, because almost all the Justice League members are born from some type of tragedy. Bruce Wayne obviously becomes Batman because his parents get killed. Superman's an orphan in a strange world. They all have a dark backstory. With Cyborg in particular, he's in a car accident that takes his mother's life and robs him of this athletic career. He's a big-time football player, and we're going to see bits of that in the movie. Just laying all that out allows us to buy into the fact that this is a kid, a college-aged kid, who is in the prime of his life, essentially, as a football player and a student, and has so many things laid out in front of him, and it gets robbed away from him through the physical accident, and then he has to become a hero. He gets transformed into Cyborg. As long as that's handled properly, that melodrama can really, push a lot of that storyline forward, and if Zack is able to wring a lot of emotion out of it, the proper emotion that comes with it, then we'll get it better than Diana talking to a screen where, Cyborg is communicating with her and saying, I know who you are, sort of thing. All that stuff gets rushed really through, and that's the cut down from 4 hours to 2 hours, and I just think that was a huge shame.
And this whole sort of emotional journey that you're talking about that Victor Stone will kind of go on, that almost to me sounds like something like a main character would do. And I know obviously it's Justice League, so all characters, I guess, are main characters, but I felt like theatrical cut really, really followed Batman most closely. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying this is factual at all because I don't know, but if I had to guess, I'd say he probably has the most screen time. Do you expect that dynamic to kind of flip at all?
Well, I think you're going to get a better mix of Bruce and Diana both being responsible for the recruitment of the team. We know for a fact that Bruce is going to recruit Aquaman and Flash. We've seen both of those scenes play out. But that Diana-Victor Stone relationship has a lot more to it, and I think you're going to get to see that played out a little bit more, which is fine. I think that since we left with Bruce and Diana at the end of BVS and the two of them discussing what they need to do to put a team together, they both should be responsible for putting that team together, and that should play into the team dynamic when we get to some of the more action-heavy beats, which would be the Gotham Harbor fight and how Cyborg is going to factor into that, because he doesn't have much to do until he plugs into the Batman's craft and interacts with Alfred. Thank you. Yes. I wanted to say Arthur. I got all turned around.
I was going to wait. I was like, where is this going?
Yeah, till he interacts with Alfred.
Thanks, Alfred. But I'll take it from here.
Do I know you?
And I wanted to go back through, is that in the Zack footage? It is, right?
I think so,
trailers?
yeah.
I think it is too. So I think that's a holdover. And then, of course, in the third act, and whenever we talk about these characters and how they're going to differ, the third act is going to be completely different in how they're used, because all of that's horrible reshoots with Superman and Cyborg pulling the mother boxes apart. I don't think that's going to be how it gets resolved in Zack Snyder's version when we finally see it. So that's going to lay into a lot more responsibility that Cyborg's going to have in the final confrontation.
Yeah, and I want to get more into that because I think there's a lot to discuss just with Cyborg's powers and the mother boxes and all of that. But something that Zack said at Fandom, and I want to read this so I get it right, he said, Cyborg is the thing in the end that holds the team together in a lot of ways. And I think that dynamic isn't necessarily present in Justice League theatrical cut.
Right. No, that's true. And I'm trying to think of different ways that can be the case. Because he's tied inherently to the mother boxes, because the mother boxes are part of his origin story, essentially. They gave him the powers. I could see him being the voice of reason inside the team when the team decides to argue over multiple things, such as whether Superman should be resurrected or not, how they should go after Steppenwolf and take the fight to him, and of course the resolution. Once Superman is alive, I think that Victor's going to have a lot more say in terms of what the team does as a dynamic, whereas he was really left on the sidelines to hastily get through, hey, we got to get this entire team to this final confrontation. I think that the way that Zack ends up using him will have a lot more significance to why the team forms, how the team forms, and what the team does moving forward. There's also a really significant scene which we haven't even spoke about yet, and Zack made sure to include it in the fandom trailer and use a decent chunk of its time to show, which is the death of Silas Stone in Star Labs, and Victor having to be part of that, to lose his father right in front of him. And I go back to the fact that you can see Flash over his shoulder as well too, which signifies that is going to be a much more significant scene because at least another member of the Justice League team is going to be there. It's a hint of just how much more there's going to be in Zack's version than what we see in theatrical, because that scene doesn't even happen in theatrical, and we know that it's going to be pretty significant in Zack's version.
Which also means the scene at the end of theatrical where Cyborg and his dad are in Star Labs just smiling at each other is not going to be how we wrap up Cyborg's story.
Lord have mercy, that's awful. And people have also mentioned, and I think that this is a really good point to bring up, is that when the Flash movie happens, it'll be curious to see how they build off of, are they building off of theatrical cut Justice League where Silas Stone is alive? Or are they building off of Zack's version where Silas Stone is dead and Cyborg is still mourning the loss of his father? I don't know that. I'll be really curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, that final scene, the montage at the end of theatrical cut is horrendous, by the way. Of just like, look how happy these heroes are now. No, it's
something else I read is,
bad.
I don't remember where I read this, so I'm sorry, I cannot give proper credit. I've been on a lot of like Reddit boards lately, but something I read was that instead of Lois Lane giving that sort of like VO, it was supposed to be Silas. But he was dead, and so I don't know if that's true, but that is interesting just because it kind of signals that, you know, Cyborg is really more the anchor of this story and kind of telling us where we're going to go.
I wouldn't be surprised if the movie started with Cyborg. Like if it started with him as the athlete, if it started with the car accident, and then, you know, showed the birth of Cyborg and then sort of transitioned into here's where the League is going to have to come back together.
Didn't think you were real. I'm real and it's useful.
Oh wait, we do know, hold on. We can confirm that the movie's going to start with Superman's death. Seen through Lois Lane's point of view. But that's okay. You can start there. What I'm saying is, I think it would be okay to do Cyborg's stuff early on. Since we know that these scenes that we see of Victor as a football player and all these things are going to have to be flashbacks, why not get them out of the way early? Because any other time that you're going to transition into it, if you start the story and we're off and running and we're getting into the meat of getting the mother boxes and taking the fight to Steppenwolf, and then all of a sudden we pause to go back to Cyborg's backstory, we don't need it necessarily. So I almost think it'd be better to start the movie there and get to
and he could almost lead into the history lesson when he becomes part of the mother boxes in a way, because we know that the scene where in theatrical cut where Diana and Bruce are walking along the lake, which kind of leads us into the history lesson, that is not Zack's.
No.
So we know that the way that we get into the history lesson will be different. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if Cyborg's part of that.
And you know what would make sense is a conversation between Victor and his father, with Silas explaining what the mother boxes are and why he's about to use them on them. When we see it, it's just that sort of security footage that Diana is seeing through Lex Luthor's files. It would make more sense to do a scene that has Victor and Silas together, where he's almost explaining to him what he's about to do to him, because it's a Dr. Frankenstein moment, and it's pretty significant.
Thank you.
So is there anything else about the mother boxes and Cyborg's connection that we kind of want to touch on that we think will be different in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Yeah, but I just think that they're going to be really important to how they get resolved. And it's not just going to be something as simple as if I could pull them apart, then we're going to be able to stop them. I think we know that Flash is going to be doing a time travel bit to trigger what happens at the end of the resolution, because we've seen him going through the Speed Force and basically manipulating his way back through, I think, other scenes in the movie. But all of that's going to factor into how Cyborg is relevant to the way that they conclude their fight against Steppenwolf, and I think that his connections to the Mother Box are going to be significant. Also, the Mother Boxes are, for all intents and purposes, a MacGuffin over the course of the entire movie, but they can be much more significant, if you really lean into the mythology of them. If you lean into the impact that they have over Cyborg, because he's essentially born of them, and the fact that the other two are deeply rooted with the Amazonians and the Atlanteans, they can be made more significant in the roles of Wonder Woman and Aquaman, as opposed to in theatrical cut, everything is like the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, there's no actual connection between Cyborg. I mean, there is literally, but that's really minimized to the point where it's you would think Cyborg would know a lot more about the Mother Boxes just because he's literally made of one.
Yes, exactly, and that's not by accident. Zack is making that part of the character's origin story, and so I'm sure he's going to lean really heavily into that and give Victor a lot more things to play with.
Let's do it.
I truly believe Cyborg is the character who's going to change the most. Maybe Superman. I guess we'll get to Superman eventually. But Ray's going to get a lot more time than Henry will in the footage, because I don't think that Superman was supposed to be part of the overall story until later in the cut. And so I don't think you're going to get a lot of Superman sprinkled throughout it because of the additional photography. I think you're still going to get Superman at the end of the film. So.
Do you still think that Superman and Cyborg are going to be the two primary characters at the end of the film who have the responsibility of handling the Mother Boxes?
No, I don't. No. I think that was total reshoot. I think that Zack will absolutely figure out a way to better use every member of the team.
A team effort.
A team effort. Yes, it's a Justice League movie, and not. No. Well, I don't know who it really relied on in the. I should go back and rewatch the final confrontation and see who gets the most.
I mean, I guess you could argue that they helped get Superman and Cyborg to a place where they didn't have to deal with the other parademons. But no, it's Superman and Cyborg at the end.
Pretty much, yeah, pulling it apart. What did Superman say? He's got some really... I kind of like being alive.
I really like being alive.
And then he, the Mother Boxes explode, and then he and Cyborg are on the ground, and he's like...
I want to die.
And then doesn't Cyborg have a line like...
I don't even understand the physics of how my toes hurt.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Yeah, he does. I forgot about that.
Terrible.
Oh, poor
Just
Ray Fisher. He's got some pretty bad lines, but we won't
Yes,
get into that.
No, not for right now. That'll be another video altogether.
Yes. All right, well, I think we've pretty much covered, from a big picture view, everything that we think will be different with Ray Fisher.
Yeah.
I mean, not Ray Fisher, sorry, Cyborg / Victor
Cyborg.
Stone.
With both of them, with all of them, with everything that Ray gets to do. And truthfully, I would like to see how they would continue Cyborg's story. And I do hope that he gets to be part of the Flash movie, because again, he's a truly interesting character and a pivotal character in the DC universe, and I don't want to see him get one and done by this Justice League. So we'll continue to track and see what happens with Cyborg in the DCEU, and especially in the Snyderverse, which I think is going to, personally, I think is going to live on HBO Max. I think they're investing in that and going to continue that. But that might be a controversial statement. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. Make sure that you keep it here with us, though, as we continue to do these videos, because we're going to be tracking all of the movement for the Release the Snyder Cut campaign and Justice League coming to HBO Max, and we want to make sure that you don't miss a single video that we post.